You're listening to the New Story podcast from New Story Church in Kansas City. To learn more about New Story Church, visit our website at www.newstory.church.
Welcome, everybody, to the Equip Podcast, where we're equipping you to live out your Christian life as you faithfully love God and love others with truth and grace. My name is Jeremy, one of the pastors here, and likely you know me. But the person that is with me today, it's not Pierce, it's not Dennis, it's not Ashley or one of our staff. It's actually someone you probably, some people in our church know, some people don't. And his name is Derek I. Say hey.
Hello.
It's kind of a unique situation having you on here, and we'll get into why. But me and Derek he's one of my best friends. You've been one of my best friends for several years now. And
it's touching that I've made that status.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean the feeling is mutual.
Okay, all right, good.
Yeah,
it's not one-sided and awkward here.
Yeah.
But after Pierce was going to be talking on reframing friendship this last weekend, I thought it would be really cool to bring you on and be able to talk a little bit about our friendship. So I think it'd be really good for you to share how we met. Well, here, let me start off with this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
One of the specific reasons why I wanted to have you on here with me is because you're not a Christian.
Yes.
That's a little different than most people we have on this podcast.
Yes.
I would venture to say, you're the first person that's not a Christian that has been on this.
Oh, but let's also paint that I'm not like an atheist, right?
How would you describe yourself?
Unsure.
Yeah, agnostic.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't really know one way or the other is kind of where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, because atheist is a pretty sure statement. A lot of people make it
like definitive.
I definitively know.
At least that's how I would take it.
Yeah. I think most people, if they're intellectually honest, would say they're agnostic. I think that's most people. It's like, do we really know? That's most people, I would say. But so that's a unique part of our friendship is that we don't align on faith and several other issues that we've talked about many times. But we, over the last, what's it been, 6 years?
6 years.
6 years, we've grown a really good friendship. So how did we meet? How did this all happen?
So, 2018. I invited a mutual friend of ours, Clint
Williamson.
Williamson, over to my house just to hang out, and he asked if he could bring a friend. Of course, I'm hospitable to
very friendly guy.
Yeah, to anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
I honestly never care. And so Clint brought Jeremy over, and we just had, we all three of us just had great conversation. Not that it's out of the norm from, God, I'm not even trying to talk myself up here, but
no, you're fine.
To have great conversations with people, right? But it was just easy conversations.
Yeah.
And honestly, the crazy part, I guess you could look at it, was the most intriguing thing to me was that you were a pastor, and I was like, oh boy, if
Clint's inviting his pastor over, I didn't know that.
The thing for me was, if you would allow me to pick your brain, you were the first person in my life that I could do that. And God, that sounds awful to be like, this guy's a Christian.
Yeah. And
he's the first person in my life since me leaving the church at a very young age. Yeah. So I can't say that I left the church at an older age and, for reasons, but a very young age, I'll say. And now having the chance to revisit it and talk to someone that can help me see their points of view. That's been one of the biggest things I've appreciated during our conversations.
Yeah, and I try to present myself in a way that people feel comfortable doing that. That I'm not some stuck up pastor looking down my nose at people. I want to be approachable.
I think that's one of the only reasons. Like, yeah, I think that's. I wouldn't say the only, but I would say that's one of the main reasons we are best friends is because I would have not probably been your friend if you tried to push it upon me.
For sure.
Yeah.
That would. It leading with like the first time we hang out, be like, "Hey, have you heard about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Derek?"
Well, yeah, it's just like, and I hate to be painting these guys in a bad light, but like Jehovah's Witnesses back in the 80s, I remember them knocking on our doors and trying to sell us like that is not a thing that I really enjoyed, and my parents right away every time that happened because they were Lutheran, would be like, stay away from those people.
Yeah.
And do not accept any other religion knocking on our door.
Yeah.
So then that right away just was like, okay, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. And then to me still I'm more of a listener, especially if people, because there's still people that do that.
Yeah.
We don't get it as much as I felt like when we did in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
I will listen more, but I'll just say thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think times have changed a lot, and we talk about this in church a lot, that if we do want to share our faith with people, you can't – cold calls don't usually work, or a cold knock on a door. It's through relationship building and stuff like that. I mean, I've gained trust with you. You've gained trust with me to be able to have open conversations about stuff, and that only happens over time. And so that's what's been fun with you is 6 years ago, I'm sure that, one night happened. And then shortly after that, it was every Thursday night after worship practice, I would either come to your house or you come to mine. And we'd hang out till 12 or 1 in the morning.
Early on, it was very much mine because of Everly being so young.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll say you have a wife and a daughter.
Yep.
Yeah. How old is Everly now?
Everly is 8. She will be turning 9 next month.
Very into ballet. If you go see the Nutcracker this year, you'll see her.
Kansas City Ballet, yep. Mm-hmm. And Lauren is 1 month younger, almost 1 month exactly, 1 month and 1 day younger than me.
Gotcha.
And we've been married for 16 years.
I didn't realize it's been that long. I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, after a while, you don't really try to keep count.
So you got married at 25? 4?
Okay, so I got married in 2008, right before I turned 27.
Oh, okay.
2 months before turning 27, so I was 26.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So jump back. I was coming over to your place, and then we'd go back and forth, and so you were there as I started to date and Aubrey and got married, and you were there through that transition, and it was really fun being able to introduce her to my friend.
There were a
Derek.
lot of funny conversations I kind of vividly remember during those times. Yeah.
And if you've spent an evening with Derek, like he'll come over Thursdays, and our whole worship team usually will hang out that night after practice, and you never know where the conversation's going to go with Derek. It's kind of fun. So a little bit of ADHD mixed with a little
bit. I'd say a lot of
a lot of ADHD mixed with conversationalist. You never know where it's going to go. It's fun. There's something you mentioned in there that I think is good, and I've heard some of it. To be honest with you, I don't know all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And not that we have to be exhaustive here, but what was your experience with the church and church people growing up?
So let's try to set some history first. Okay. I don't have a whole lot of memories to really paint,
mm-hmm.
in terms of it, and I don't know if that's because it's something I just really didn't enjoy my whole life, and that's why I don't have a lot of memories. Mm. But I know that I'd go to Sunday school every single day, and I think that started roughly when I was about 3 or 4. Or not every day, but every Sunday.
In a Lutheran church.
At a Lutheran church. And I looked it
up.
Catholic
for some reason.
I looked it up. They are officially, since whenever it started, LCMC. Mm-hmm. I just looked it up prior to this thing because I was trying to, they're still around. They're a very large church
mm-hmm.
congregation for the small town I lived in.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas would pull 400 people.
Wow, yeah.
Which is a large church for a very small town.
Yeah.
And so it's a big thing. But so I'd go there every Sunday, just like clockwork, right?
Yeah.
Didn't ever attend church though as a young kid until like it was Christmas Eve. I would always go there, but otherwise I would not. I could not tell you at that church if my parents were going to church while I was at Sunday school. I can't remember.
You think there's a possibility of them just dropping you off?
All I remember is, them dropping me off and meeting me after I was done.
Gotcha.
That's all I remember of that. We moved to Kansas City when I was 6.
Okay.
And they, of course, had to find another Lutheran church. And we started going there. Same routine, same ordeal. But as time went on, and critical thinking starts happening, probably right around 9 years old, like when it really starts happening.
Yeah.
You start to develop other emotions, right? Yeah. Have your own thoughts. You start questioning a lot more things in life.
For sure.
I see that in my own child today. Just her asking me random questions.
And suddenly, the more simple answers that you could give when they were younger don't suffice anymore.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, yeah, from 6 till I would say about 9 or 10 is when I really started asking my parents a lot more about Jesus and God. The problem I had with the replies and the school in general was
because you were in a Lutheran school. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mean elementary school?
Yeah. Well, you said you had a problem with the school.
The Sunday school.
Sunday school. Okay, I thought you went to a.
No.
Oh, okay.
I went to public elementary school.
Oh, okay. Sorry, carry on. The problem you had.
Yep. Was it wasn't well received.
Just asking questions.
Yeah. Because I was doing it in the room with all the other students.
Don't poison the well, Derek.
No, exactly. I mean, they almost gave me the look of like this isn't the venue to be asking this stuff in. Well, when you're a child, what else can you ask the right person?
You don't have the social awareness.
Yeah. And then, you ask your parents, and a lot of times it was just 'cause. That was like kind of the answer I got. Just because that's the way God and Jesus is, right?
Yeah.
And like as the simplest terms of an answer as I can give you. And that never sat well with me.
As it shouldn't.
Yeah, it wasn't. To me, I couldn't just accept it. By you saying that, I needed to feel, like reinforcement behind it.
Yeah, I think it was Einstein. Well, I think some of that shows like maybe they didn't quite know why they believe certain things, so you don't know how to explain it. I think it was Einstein that said, if you don't know how to explain it to a child, you don't know it well enough.
Exactly. That's perfect. Yeah. I think for that generation and my parents' generations prior, it was probably just a thing you did.
Yep. You don't
while growing up, and you don't question it, right? The other thing that made it really hard for me I'll say two things that made it really hard for me to try to be a Christian were this. And we've had this conversation numerous times, is the light switch effect, where you would go on Sunday and come home and it just is turned off. You go Sunday, it's turned on, come home, it's turned off.
Put on the show.
We would do no prayers at home.
Yeah.
We wouldn't talk about God or Jesus at home hardly at all unless I asked the questions. And then it was just never talked about again.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we doing? And the other part was, if my dad ever listened to this, he probably would kill me.
I don't know
you
if
could
News
tell
Story Podcast has
my
that much
dad
of a
has
reach.
always made it very apparent to me, without saying the words, that he doesn't believe either, but is doing it to make my mom happy.
Yeah. At least that's what you pick up from it.
That's what I read.
Yeah.
Because I will say this, he himself has never had any kind of in-depth conversations about God or Jesus with me.
Yeah.
Right? Not that that's the only thing in the Bible to talk about.
I mean, kind of a big deal, but
yeah,
that's,
you know,
if you can't answer some basic questions about God and Jesus, a lot of the other things are going to be harder to talk about too.
Did I answer the original question? What was the original question again? Like, I guess
Yeah,
I painted the history.
What was your experience with the church and church
Okay,
people growing
so
up? Yeah.
by about 11 or I would say about 11 or 12
Mm-hmm.
is when, because I would every single weekend. I remember getting in arguments as soon as I got in the car, like, Mom, Dad, I do not like going here.
Yeah.
I really don't want to go anymore.
Yeah.
And my parents finally accepted because they said that there was some financial issues going on at the church they didn't agree with.
Oh, okay.
And that's when they finally, and they might have also just kind of given in because they were tired of me every single time getting in the car, just being angry.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how is that healthy for your child?
Yeah. Yeah.
To every day when he's done, he's not wanting to be there.
Yeah.
So, and the other part was, like, since I was in that state, I no longer felt accepted by the other kids in the classroom.
You were the dissenting voice.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, I had a problem with that because I guess I wasn't critically thinking about it this much back then, but looking back on it now is, why would you not have had more conversations with that child to understand where he's coming from and maybe talk them through it?
Yeah. And you're not,
instead of, like, alienating them.
For sure. And that's the, like, I don't have the answers to everything. But with our students, I'm going to entertain every single question they have because I was there too. And if they can't interrogate what they believe in a safe place like the church, that should be the safest place to interrogate what you believe and ask questions. Then, like, when they get out of here and like they turn 18 or making more decisions for themselves, why would they ever come back to this place?
Yeah.
You know? And so around 11 or 12, you and your parents stopped going?
Yeah, and and they remember my brother as well. Yeah, it was just that was it. That was the last time that I actively went to church.
Yeah,
it was all Lutheran, no other religion.
Did your parents ever go again?
So what we did continually do, until my grandfather had passed, is, you know, I'm from Iowa, so we would still go back for every Christmas.
I knew that.
Huh?
I don't think I knew that. Where in Iowa?
Lamar's.
Oh, duh. Never mind. I didn't know this.
You knew that, yeah. Until Lauren and I got married, of course. But we would go back to Lamar's for every Christmas, and that would be the one time I still went to St. John's.
Yeah.
And Lamar's.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and again, a lot of times I just did it. It was mostly out of respect for my, you know, grandfather. Yeah. That was a big part of his life. Yeah. He still went every Saturday, and so did my uncle. Him and would go and usher every single Saturday. Yeah. That was just the thing. And again, I don't know. Did they truly believe? Maybe, yeah. Yeah. Again, they never. It was with them though. Again, it never came. They never came home and talked about it. They would just be like, "Yeah, the sermon was good," and that was that.
Compartmentalized life. It's like I've got my Jesus in church box here, stays in that box, and when I come home, I've got work, I've got all this other stuff that stays here.
Yes,
yeah. That's really common, and especially in kind of like Western America Christianity, especially like evangelicalism. It is very common to compartmentalize your faith and everything because we're so individualistic is a big part of it too. Rugged individualism is kind of the backbone of America, and being a part of something that's bigger than yourself, like a church and community with other people, is that goes kind of in the face of that. And so it's a lot easier to just separate it out and keep it there and not.
For me though, I don't. If you were this is just my thoughts. If you're a true Christian, you can't I can't say the word compartmentalize the thoughts.
Which we talk about all the time here at New Story. Yeah, if Jesus literally is the Lord of your life, the leader and Lord of your life, 100%. That's not like one area. That's your whole life. It's Jesus in my work, Jesus in my friendships, Jesus in my hobbies. Like it's not like those things are separated out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you grow up in that type of environment, seem to be ostracized for having questions and not really seeing, you're seeing kind of what more crudely would be like hypocrisy in your family of like, we're one thing here and one thing here, as far as at church and at home. What'd you pick up on as far as like what the purpose of the church is and like why we do church?
As a kid, I didn't see the purpose.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
As an adult, I think, and I've said this to you numerous times, I think my biggest takeaway at this point, and because I haven't also been integrated at all enough to really gather much more of an opinion besides this, is to build community. That's my thought right now.
Yeah.
There could be a lot more if I integrated myself. And it could, and even from like if I just took it from my black and white brain of like just listening, I could obviously have more opinions than that. But I think that the greatest thing about a church is everybody coming together, respecting each other, and just building that community. Like I said, and that's what needs to happen. I think it. You could correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Let's say some of my thought processes is in terms of why the story of Jesus is so strong is because there were so many, this is what my thinking is, so many years of turmoil that religion was a way for them, the community, the church was a way for them
like when it was originally built? Okay.
To get away from that. And to have something to have hope for.
Yeah. I think that was what we read in Acts. So the book of Acts kind of walks through after Jesus ascended, like what happens next. Like how did the church build from like just this small group of Jesus followers to like it's 2,000 years later, 7,000 miles later. How are we here? You know, still gathering and talking about this first century Jewish man. And what you're talking about, I think, is a result of the church, like a benefit of the church. We see that in Acts 2, like when the church is born, we read about how they had all things in common. They are living in like deep community with one another. They're talking about the teachings of the Scripture and teaching of the apostles at the time. And they're breaking bread together, as it says. They're living lives together. They're selling things to meet needs. It's like this. It's a lot more communist or communal. Maybe we'll avoid the political ramifications of communist, but communal than our kind of American mindset would be comfortable with. But that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about is kind of a result of what the church is, because the church, what its main purpose is to equip the saints, like equip us to go out and continue to grow the mission of Jesus and point people to Jesus. That's the ultimate purpose of the church. And so, but one of the cool parts of that is the community that's should be able to be found in that.
I guess, so if layman's terms, it would be saying, how can you integrate Jesus' paths, I guess,
sure,
in your life, and try to exhibit that as much as you can?
Ask that again. What are you asking?
Oh, just in a sense of like, okay, if I'm going to church, right? I'm coming to listen to the sermons. Yeah. And everybody, every single time that they're listening, it's a learning process, right? Yeah. It's to reinforce the ways of Jesus, God, can help make your life fulfilling, and also make others' lives fulfilling. Yeah.
I think at a very base level, I don't disagree with that at all. We're constantly pointing to Jesus as the example of how we're to live our lives, and so the paths or the ways of Jesus are what we try to follow and implement into our own lives. I think you're accurate on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
You're
I don't know.
You're fine. So the purpose of the church has I guess maybe that idea of community. When did you kind of come to that understanding that maybe that's what church is about? Or have you always felt that way?
Really? Since I've known you.
Yeah.
I didn't have that understanding prior to that, but I also didn't even try to.
Right.
Again,
Yeah.
I didn't have someone like you in my life to help me see what church is like today.
Yeah.
Right? You bringing your friends into my life.
Yeah.
The friends that go to church constantly help me see. There's great that always comes out of this, right? I will say I never derogatorily look at a church. It's I think what happens within a church is great. It's just that I'm unsure of the complete premise of it.
Yeah.
So I can't sit there and just sit through it, right?
Yeah. The baseline belief of Christianity. It's not based on a book. It's based on an event, and it's the resurrection of Jesus. And if you don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus, it's really hard to follow these other things. And so sometimes community can be an on-ramp to belief as you're interacting with people and spending time. And so that's something you've got to do with me. And so you know many people in the church. Pierce, my wife, much of the worship team, like Shemez and Ashley, Micah, Rosanna, and spouses. But you also, to jump back a little bit, you also know a lot of people who aren't here anymore.
That is true.
You were
a lot of people I actually enjoyed.
Yeah, you're around and good friends with Aaron and Amanda and Alex and Nicola and Amanda and Sunil, Jess Hughes, a lot of people, and so we don't have to go far down this road, but I know that during that there was a season of church here where relationships splintered and things got really hard and people left the church, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We don't need to get into that.
Yep.
But your experience at that time was you saw this flourishing group of people, and suddenly there's divisions and there's dying on hills. There's like a ripping apart of this community that once was. What did you think through that, watching that happen? Because you were in and amongst it the whole time.
My personality, the biggest thing was I just was heartbroken.
Yeah, and you're a peacemaker naturally.
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
you want. Yeah.
And I for me, because I always tell Everly all the time, have as many friends as you can have. You can never have too many. And for me, it's like I wanted to find out why and fix it. That was just like my natural intuition, because that's what I want to do. It's like this should be able to be
surely we can
easily
sort it
resolved,
out. Yeah.
right? Reality is, the fracture occurred for reasons beyond repair, right? So yes, I do miss all of those people still, because for me, I love everyone unless you do me wrong. But yeah, I don't have any ill will towards any of those people for leaving. That's their choice, and just know that even though I don't see them anymore, I still love them.
Yeah.
And when I say love, guys, I understand that I love a lot of people in my life.
You do.
You
love well. You do.
Yes. And everybody knows it because I'm a hugger. And I just care about everyone.
Yeah. And so now, kind of on the back end of all that, 6 years into a relationship with a pastor, how is your, and you've shared a little bit of this, but maybe a little bit more concise or specific question on it. How has your view of the church and church people changed since when you were younger, or even a lot of your adult life to now?
So I don't know if it's necessarily changed. In terms of, because here's what I'll say.
Okay.
For many years, I tended to stay away from it in general. Like when I saw certain people that were part of Young Life in high school, like I had no desire to really venture down that, ever really become close friends with those people, because I just was wanting to stay away from it completely, and I was always afraid. I don't know why, and again, it just was me being young and naive, probably for the most part, of not even trying to, not integrating with it and having them influence my thinking, at all. Because I just was like, I feel so right about this, and there was in my high school years, there was so much uncertainty about myself that I went through that I didn't want to introduce something else that was uncertain.
Yeah.
Right. And so at this, point in my life, I guess it would depend. This is funny. This sounds horrible.
A lot of prefaces.
Yeah. Preface it with that. I guess it depends on the church community.
Yeah.
Like for example, when I dated a girl in college and she took me to the Catholic Church, I was not allowed to do really much of anything there.
Yeah.
Because whatever the process might be, I quote unquote, I don't really know.
Yeah.
To be considered a Catholic, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't take communion.
You hadn't gone through confirmation.
Yeah, none of that. And the funny thing was, like, I said to her, at my Lutheran church, there was nothing I ever had to go through that said I couldn't take communion. So why is it I have to at a Catholic church? Why is that a thing? And so to me, right away, that painted that picture. And looking back on it, I probably would care less now. But at that time, it painted the picture that you were somehow better than me. That everybody
create
in that
a
room
hierarchy in some way.
was it absolutely. Well, Catholicism is a hierarchy in general, just with there's
a lot of that. Yep.
Yeah, the priests and the cardinals and I don't even go to church, and it's common knowledge that that's the closest person to God is the Pope.
You have the Pope. Yeah.
And that's ridiculous to me. It's nonsense.
Yep. I would agree with that.
And so I will say that those types of things I ran into, I did not appreciate, and really did not. It made me really uncomfortable, right? And it was also tough because that was a huge part of her life, but we were dating, and we didn't date a long time, but it definitely would have come into fruition as a problem. Once if marriage ever came about, right?
Especially if she was very devout and into Catholicism.
Yeah. I will say though, again, knowing you opened up my opinion of all of it.
Yeah.
I kind of was sort of thinking that's how non-denominational churches would be, just more open anyways.
Yeah.
But I didn't. When you bring all your friends out, to hang out, and I'm a part of that, and it's never pushed.
Yeah.
Religion is never pushed upon me.
Yeah.
That is the most appreciating thing that I like about everyone.
Yeah.
And we can all just be friends and enjoy each other's company.
Yeah. Now, I've never been shy to tell you I would love to see you follow Jesus, but I can't make that decision for you, and so I'm not going to constantly beat you over the head with the gospel and try to be like, hey.
Yeah. So I guess that leads back to a question I had.
Yeah.
For all you listeners out there, I had asked Jeremy a question earlier this week of, for someone to have faith or be accepted as having faith to the public, do you have to be baptized?
That's a good question. So this gets into another section of this conversation that I wanted to get into anyway. But yeah, so when it comes to baptism, or let me jump back. When it comes to faith, it's not really something I can know if you have or not. The only thing I can base that off of is as we say in the church, the fruit we see in your life. What comes out of you. You can tell if I let's break it down very simple. You can tell I'm a Packers fan we're sitting in my office. You can tell I'm a Formula One fan by the picture and the remote control car in my office. You can see that. You can see it in how I talk. You can see it in what I do and spend my time doing. You can see I'm a Formula One fan. That's very similar to how we would approach your faith. How do I know that you ultimately have faith and belief in something? I don't unless I can see it out of you. Now, God knows your heart. I don't, and so that's all I have to go off of. And what baptism is, and this is different than a Catholic tradition, a more high church tradition, is we're a Baptist church. Spoiler alert. And so Baptists got their names by full baptism by immersion, completely dunking under the water and back up. And in doing so, you identify with Jesus in his death, burial, and resurrection as you come back out. It's what we see in the Bible. And what baptism is, it is a public declaration. You saying, I'm a follower of Jesus and I want people to see it. I have faith in Jesus and I want people to see it. So really, it's not me deciding or other Christians deciding whether you have faith. It's you wanting to tell people and proclaim that through this outward expression of an inward change.
You know what's funny about that statement in general?
Yeah.
So I was, because my parents went to church before I was even born, I was baptized as an infant.
Yeah.
How does an infant have the ability to publicly say, so it's almost like, I don't understand. It's like, to me, if that's the case, allow a person to decide when they want to be baptized.
And that's what we do. So that's a big difference between Protestant and maybe Catholic, for example, which we would be a Protestant church. And that's why we don't baptize babies. What essentially is happening when you baptize a baby in Catholicism or Lutheranism or whatever it may be, what's happening is you're essentially saying, hey, we want to raise our child in this way. We want to point them towards Jesus. We want them to be raised with this faith. And so they'll sprinkle or whatever it may be an infant. Nowhere in the entire Bible do you see that anywhere. As far as using baptism in that way. Nowhere in Scripture. That was a tradition developed over hundreds of years. And I don't, personally, I could do some research. I don't know why that was developed that way. We do something similar, but it's not baptism. We do what we call family dedications, where it's people, no matter the age of their kids, if they want to come forward. We're actually doing this next Sunday, not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday, where there was a family in our church that they just had a child, and they want to say, hey, we want the church to come alongside us and encourage us and hold us accountable to raising this kid in a way that honors God. We want to essentially dedicate this child to the Lord in that how we raise them. Now, we can't make them follow Jesus. We can't make that decision for them, the kid. But we're going to try to raise them in such a way that points them towards Jesus. And essentially, that's what your parents were trying to do when you were baptized as a baby.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people do. But baptism through the Bible, what we see is people came to faith in Jesus, and then they were dunked. They're identifying with Jesus and his death, burial, and resurrection, and telling people, this is who I am now. This is what I believe. And so it's different than a sprinkling. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Because then you had a couple questions on baptism, so
yeah.
Hopefully that helps. But so it's just it's a difference in tradition, but I'll say nowhere in Scripture do we see, nowhere from the Bible, which is what we take our cues from, nowhere in there do we see anything about baptizing infants.
not that this would ever happen, but this is probably the most absurd statement I could ever say.
All right, say it.
This is the ADD in me. For someone like me,
Okay.
to believe in Jesus, boy, wouldn't I give anything to have a time machine and go back and see when he was around.
Oh,
If
like
he
to go
was
back
around.
first century and see what...
And witness the not only the surroundings in general, right? Just take in what's going on during that time. Probably not a lot of great.
For a way different style of life.
Yes.
Yeah, especially in if you're going to talk about him in a very Jewish culture.
Also witness him and his teachings.
Yeah.
And man, wouldn't that be finally something I'd be like, wow, okay.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I don't know if it necessarily would make me a believer.
I mean, you're looking at him.
I am looking at a believer that he existed at one point, right?
Yeah.
Now, whether or not should follow his teachings and all of that stuff, I don't know.
Yeah, those are different things. Or that he's the son of God. Those are different things.
Yes.
There's things that like archaeology can help us with, and history and histories can help us with. For example, there is plenty of extra biblical, outside the Bible sources, and histories that verify that this man Jesus of Nazareth lived and walked the earth. He was murdered by Romans, and that there was a mysterious empty tomb. This is outside the Bible, verified. Now, whether or not where archaeology then stops and can't is archaeology can't then verify that Jesus was the Son of God. He did all these miracles, and that God raised him from the dead. That's where the faith component comes in. So we have extra biblical facts and truth that show, hey, this guy was a human being that lived and walked this earth. There's verifiable proof. But all the other parts of it, the claims that he made, that'll come down to faith and what you ultimately believe and trust about his teachings. Because we read his teachings in Scripture and what he said and what he wrote or taught and all that. Anyway,
to talk about that a little bit there. ADD brain here. I don't remember what was the name of the movie in the 2000s that Jim Caviezel was in.
Is that the Passion of the Christ?
Passion of the Christ.
Yeah.
So for someone who's not a believer of religion, Lauren and I did go see that together, if I recall.
That's totally random.
Yeah. And
hey, we're not Christian. Let's go see the Passion of the Christ.
Yeah. But my thing that I internalized at that point when I watched that movie was, if this person truly had existed and sacrificed that greatly, it was beyond fathomable.
Yeah. If that actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even to me, even though I didn't know, I still don't know if he's ever existed. It was a lot to digest.
For sure. Take it outside of the Christian aspect. What you got to witness in that was a Roman crucifixion. And that Jesus wasn't the only one crucified. That's what they did to criminals.
Yeah.
So
a normal human being.
Yeah. Historically, that's what the crucifixion, that's what happened. Like it's horribly dark. So if nothing else, you got to see what that looked like.
Yes.
So what about Christianity? Do you find hard to believe? Which I'm sure there's a number of things, and you've alluded to some of them. But
what about Christianity? Well, okay. So in simplest terms is, I can't just have faith in anything without really seeing it for myself.
Okay.
Right? Like, I don't know if I have faith in our government anymore.
That's a whole other podcast.
A whole another podcast, right?
2.
In the same premise, though.
Yeah.
Right? If I can't see something in front of me, it's hard for me to believe in it.
Can I challenge you on that?
Sure.
Okay. Do you believe George Washington existed?
You're gonna go there, huh?
I mean, you said it.
I knew
and
you
so
were gonna
I'm
go
taking
there,
you to
and
the
here's
logical-
the problem with this is like, yeah, it's like okay, books, yes, books,
history. You see,
history, right? It's not that far back.
Mm-hmm.
Is it easier to believe historically? It's like, okay, yeah, did King Henry the First exist or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's documentation.
Yeah.
Well, okay, the Bible. It's an aggregate of stories.
Yeah. So the only reason I brought that up, and it's not like, oh, I got the atheist. What a loser! It's not a gotcha moment or anything like that. It's simply
It is
like,
a good. It is a good argument.
well, the point I'm trying to make is what you said is what a lot of people say is like, unless I can see it and touch it, feel it, smell it, I'm not going to believe it.
Here's the biggest.
But we do that with a lot of things.
Do I easily believe that George Washington existed? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Sure. I can easily accept that because he's not going to influence my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's fair.
Right?
The implications of believing Jesus was who he said he was are
Let's
a
just
lot
say
bigger.
I was like, yeah, Jesus existed. Well, let's say that because there's a book that made that out there.
Yeah.
But to have faith in my belief,
Mm-hmm.
you can correct me if that's wrong, is to have faith is to accept Jesus in your life.
Mm.
And again, exhibit what he would want out of you, right?
There's levels. So you can have we have faith in all kinds of things all the time. You have faith in your wife that she's not going to run off and right. So we have there's levels of faith. Like you can have faith in that like histories were right and this Jesus figure lived. But there's another level that says I have faith in trusting and believing that he is who he said he was. And that he did come and live a life that I couldn't live, died a death that I should have died, to give me new life. Like that's and to right the relationship between me and God because of my sin and my wrongdoing. Like that's a whole different level of faith now. So you can have faith and believe that person existed, but believing he was a son of God sacrificed for you is a whole different level. And it's something that's the baseline. Of Christianity.
Let's compare the two too as well, right? George Washington,
mm-hmm.
first president, did great things. Let's say great, quote unquote, for our nation. The stories of Jesus and what he did,
mm-hmm.
hard for anybody to fathom.
Yeah,
right, and to like have faith in those stories is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And that's for me the hardest part.
Yeah.
And it always makes me go, well, how does everyone that's a part of the church community work through that? Mm-hmm. I don't want to say look past it or anything like that. I'm saying because you are obviously you might have had the same questions in your lifetime
for sure
as a person.
Yes.
But you've gone through trying to I don't want to say compartmentalize, but maybe that is the good word to use here.
Yeah.
To internalize, to connect, and understand how that was feasible.
Yeah. It's what you bring up is what should happen for every person that's going to follow Jesus. And a lot of times people are raised in the church, and we've seen a lot of my generation, millennials, walk away from the church because they were raised similarly to you and just kind of told this is what you believe and never really given the opportunity to interrogate that for themselves. And so they haven't thought through and reasoned through, is this guy really, did those events really happen? And like, how is that now going to affect my life? Because at some point when I'm making decisions for myself, the nostalgia of it wears off. Or like, I have to make the decision. Like you said, the implications of Jesus being who he said he was are a lot bigger than George Washington on your life. And so if I'm going to actually follow this guy, make her the forgiver of my sins and leader of my life, that's going to change literally. I'm no longer in the driver's seat of my life. It's going to change everything in my life. And the reason people, I think there has been a huge exodus out of the church by many in my generation are twofold. One has been they haven't had the chance to interrogate that for themselves, and then two, they've seen other Christians that maybe are very influential in their life and in their church and everything like that, completely wiling out on politics and all kinds of different stuff, where they're like, if that's Christianity, I want nothing to do with it. And so you have people walking away because of mainly, if I'm going to make a
and also
observation,
probably contribute to the bad media that sometimes comes out of any
for sure.
any person related to a church, right?
Yeah, and the reason those bad media and different things and failings of pastors are like so big and so hurtful, for even someone in my position as a pastor, it's hurtful to me because this job you have. I'm not hyping myself up. I'm not perfect, but you have to have integrity and you have to have checks and balances. And where you don't, you become kind of untouchable. And you are now from a stage in your life proclaiming one thing and in the background living a completely double life where you're cheating on your wife or have this addiction or whatever it may be. And then that stuff gets found out and you're like, oh, all that crap that was really impactful to me that you taught and you did, now I know you didn't mean none of it because you weren't actually living it.
Yeah,
And that's the big incongruence that people struggle with outside the church and inside the church, and people have left the church because they see this leader or even other Christians living one way and completely speaking another. It's the two, speaking out of both sides of my mouth type idea.
Very easy for that role to step into a role of power.
Oh yeah, and that. Unchecked, that will go to your head.
Yeah.
Because I do have a lot of influence in people's lives, spiritual influence, which is a very heavy thing in people's lives. I have a lot of influence on that, and so I have to be very careful with that. And yeah, you see they go haywire all the time.
It does, as I've said to you many times before. I said in high school I tried to stay away from it, but boy, what it still had been fun for me as a teenager. Since you're not a person to push religion, if you existed as you are today, back when I was a teenager, that I could question, could ask the questions, right?
Yeah.
And also help me work through those thoughts that I had back then, that I couldn't deal with.
Yeah, what I tell my students all the time, and I tell their parents all the time, is I'm going to make I'm going to point them towards Jesus. That I think is the best thing you can do with your life is to follow Jesus and give your life to him 100%. I'm not going to step like shy away from that. But my job as a youth pastor specifically is not to tell you what to think. And that's where I think the church has gotten it wrong sometimes. And I'm saying I'm perfect and doing it right. We're brand new, but my job is not to tell you what to think. It's to help you learn how to think. And how to think biblically. And so as you, I would hope that, I'm sure I do have students in my youth group that are a lot like you. And I say all the time that it is a safe place to ask questions. And you're not going to be stupid for asking questions. It is okay to interrogate this because you're going to at some point. Why not do it in this environment where we have people around you that can help you walk through stuff or think through stuff? Like even this Sunday, I'm teaching on doubt. Because Christians doubt, even though people put on a very pretty face. We all doubt at certain times about different things and working through those beliefs, just like you are right now. Yeah,
that's just critical thinking in general.
Yeah, and not all Christians are known for critical thinking. True. Yeah. And I wish we were a little bit more known for that.
I think a lot of it sometimes is patience too, for that critical thinking to happen.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't want to dive into this in the podcast, but I think that's a lot of what's going on with today.
Yeah.
And some of the hatred we see towards each other is just not the patience of listening, thinking about what you're really saying, or portraying onto people.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's so funny if we could just all treat each other the same as humans. And this might go on to, like, again, for others out there that are wanting to know, like, as a thing that Jeremy has a disagreement with me on is abortion and homosexuality. I could care less what anybody wants to do with their lives. That is their thing. Now, as a person, let's say if I had to go through choosing to have an abortion or not, the only reasons that I probably would ever consider abortion is if my wife was going to lose her life because of the abortion, or the baby was already dead.
Yeah. Well, it's not an abortion at that point. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It's the process, we'll say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That is very, very tough to figure out and navigate in general. And the turmoil that a family would have to go 100%. Through to decide that.
Yeah.
The new life or your current wife's life, right?
Hope I never have to make that decision.
Yeah. And then the homosexuality thing, I don't care what sexual preference you have at all. It's not. I'm not bi. I'm not homosexual, but if you want to be, go for it. You can go have relationships with anybody else you want to, as long as the other person's accepting of it. Yeah, and if they ever
be a key play.
Yeah, and to you, as upon talking about religion, marriage is a huge thing for Christianity, right?
In what way? What do you mean?
It is in general, I will say, it's probably maybe no more, but we are bound together as one now.
When you get married?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, I don't know. It's interesting to me. In your church, would you guys ever? Maybe this isn't the right venue to ask.
No, it's fine.
Would you ever marry a homosexual transsexual couple?
I wouldn't.
And why?
A few reasons. Well, let me back up a little bit, because I think it's a little bit more nuanced than just yes or no, because I hate people. That's not it at all.
Well, yeah,
you can't
just
not
give
what
that.
You're saying.
Yeah,
I know that's not what you're saying, but that's usually the implication that people take from it, that I'm a homophobe or transphobe or whatever it may be. So personally, and this may be a hot take, I think I've talked about it on here before.
Well, I haven't heard it.
Yeah, okay. I think we've talked about it. Gay marriage. I think an issue happened in marriage when we allowed the government to get involved and decide if you are legally married. Because when you are legally married, there are certain rights and benefits to that as citizens. And in a pluralistic society in which we live, because as much people want to believe it's a Christian nation, we're not. It's a pluralistic society where people have different beliefs. I think those rights should be afforded to people, no matter their.
So you're saying marriage licenses shouldn't be a thing?
I think if they're going to be, it needs to be broader like it is right now, as far as like offering that to, if somebody is choosing to spend their lives together as homosexuals or lesbians or whatever it may be, they should have those legal rights just like anyone else should. They should have the same rights to housing and tax breaks and different things like that as anyone else would.
Yeah.
That is trying to be as faithful as I can be this side of eternity, that if people are afforded certain rights by the government, it should be afforded to other people too, or all people too. Now, so
I can agree with that.
So as far as like gay marriage, I don't have an issue with it from that standpoint. Okay. Where I have an issue with it is I believe the Bible teaches one man, one woman for life. And that's what marriage should be. And so while legally we may recognize those marriages as marriages, I don't believe in God's eyes that those are marriages. Because God designed marriage between one man and one woman for life.
would make me want to have a conversation with someone who is a Christian, but is also gay.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
right?
No, it's good.
How did they work through what it? Do they think it says in the but like what's their internal thinking about the man and woman thing?
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a lot of positions that I can give you some books if you're a book reader or a podcast or whatever, but we can also talk about it sometime off mic or on mic. It doesn't matter, but it's not like I'm afraid to talk about any of this stuff. A lot of it comes down to specific verses that have historically been called the clobber passages, where people have taken basically scripture verses about homosexuality and prohibiting it and calling it sinful that now have been used as kind of battering rams on people that do have same-sex attraction or whatever it may be, and that's kind of what drove to conversion camps and different crap like that should have never happened. And so there's been a lot of books written, and it's kind of a standard position within more progressive Christianity that we've misinterpreted these things, and now all these years later we're kind of doing, in my opinion, a little bit of theological gymnastics to make those things okay and completely shift our understanding of what homosexuality is in the Bible. And so I have a book called Unclobber that walks through those things. I don't agree, but I need to be able to interact with it and understand. I mean, there's several people in our church that have homosexual siblings that are married and have completely different positions on that. Some would say they're Christian, some would say they're not. So I have known many people that claim to be Christian and have same-sex attraction or are married to someone of the same sex. So it can get difficult because we got to try to protect what would be orthodoxy, what we believe is right teaching from the Bible, and but that gets really hard when people have in a broken world. It can get really difficult.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
About that. Do you think, or is it possible, the Bible only says man and woman because that was what was generally accepted back then? Or do they have some definitive reason behind that statement?
Ultimately, it goes back to the very beginning and
of Adam and Eve.
How God created.
Is that what we're going back to, Adam and Eve?
Yeah, it goes back to how God created.
So you're saying because of the Adam and Eve story, that is the only that was the only way to what?
Well, when God created, He created man and woman, and He gave them the what's called the cultural mandate: be fruitful and multiply. To start things out. Now, and He called that very good. He said, "This is very good. This is my design. I've created male and female in my image. This is very good. This is what I want for humanity." And so that is where if we're going to root it all the way back, we root it in God's design and how He created. Yeah. And so what if
this is ADD Derek, right?
Listen, I have
to
had
me that's just
6 years of conversations.
That's just a story, right?
Sure.
What if there was some dude named Steve on another island just chilling and is like, man, I'm all by myself out here. And Adam and Eve are over there having it good.
Oh, the Adam and Eve, Adam and Steve thing. Yeah, so...
I didn't mean to actually put that into... I didn't even think about that. I just chose the name Steve because Steve seems like it's such a... It's like, it could be something else,
so
like,
funny.
like Joey. Joey's over there.
Yeah, I remember when I was in elementary school was the first time I ever saw somebody wearing a T-shirt. And I don't know why we had kids wearing this T-shirt, but it was a kid wearing a T-shirt that said it was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And I remember that vividly from elementary school. But anyway,
I forgot about that because I don't ever hear that statement much anymore. It was very something 90s, 2000s.
It was very much like checkmate atheists. We got you.
Yes.
Like it's dumb.
Yes.
But, so
sorry to all Steves out there.
Yeah. If there was, if there was a proverbial Steve off on an island somewhere by himself, that would be in direct contradiction to God's design.
Sure.
And so therein, it undermines much of the belief system about how God created and how we got to where we are.
I think therein lies some of the problems I have with it is the Bible is a bunch of aggregated stories. And just because it's possibilities, a story doesn't exist about a person doesn't mean that person ever existed. Right? It's same thing can hold true. Like, why do I not believe in Jesus? It's the same thing. There's stories, there's not stories, but there's a possibility that could have happened. I'm not going to negate that Jesus was a possibility. I'm not saying that. But if I just walked away from here today and be like, Jesus, I'm always going to say Jesus could have been a thing. Yeah. I'm not going to say
it's
was
agnostic.
fake.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
again, it has to do with all the stories.
Yeah.
Right. If Jesus was just some other random dude, it is much easier to believe that story.
Yeah.
Like, he was a guy that just went to Quick Trip Daily, and that was the story of Jesus, right? And you're like, okay, that I can believe that. That's so easy. Yeah.
Yeah, because like you said very poignantly, the implications of who he says he was are astronomical, and that's why like our entire like the turning point in history is the birth of Jesus. Like, it's before Christ and after, or well, now we've changed it, common era, before common era, but he is we can use different terms, but the turning point was his life.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And so like there's something big there, more than just being a random first century Jewish dude. Either he was really, the famous quote is he was either a liar, lunatic, or Lord. And I think that was C.S. Lewis. I can't remember. A liar, lunatic, or Lord. He's one of those three things.
Sounds like a very C.S. Lewis thing.
Yeah, we have to decide which one of those he was, because we have to do something with Jesus. Because he's the turning point in history, So anyway, but to jump back, the Bible is full of stories, and whether you choose to believe those are histories or not, some of that is up to you, and that's a faith thing. Again, because ultimately, and me and the students just talked about this recently, as we're walking through kind of the overall story of the Bible to give them just kind of the 30,000 foot view. We went back to the very beginning. We talked about creation, and it takes faith to believe that that's how things happened, and it takes faith to believe, if you're going to go on the other side of things, it takes faith to believe that the Big Bang happened, and we got here by random chance, natural selection, survival of the fittest. We go from inorganic primordial soup to the whole organic world and complex cell that we see today. Those are two competing visions of how we got here, because it's a Big Bang theory. We have no observable proof that happened. We're just like, based on expansion of the universe, we're like, okay, it had to have been in a hot dense state at one point. And so it's a theory that takes faith to believe, just like very similarly, I would say, very similarly to even just go down to an intelligent designer, right? That there was an intelligent designer that created this with order and purpose.
Just like evolution. You have to have faith that is it easier for me to internalize that evolution is a thing than believing in Jesus? A little bit more. Yeah. But it's still hard for me to fully to bridge all of those gaps.
Yeah. It's there's certain things that, think about it from a like secular worldview. It's easier to just accept evolution and jump within species and grow, like to get like from nothing, no cell, no organisms, to everything, just from random chance, natural selection, survival of the fittest. That is just accepted within kind of academic circles and more secular circles, just like God created 6 literal 24-hour days. He spoke the universe into existence. That's just accepted within Christian circles. So that we've got both sides of this. Just both sides are claiming truth. And so which one are we gonna go with? Which one is most compelling to us? But we have to interrogate both of them, because I think the more we think about life just happening and the universe just happening, and then thinking through how all these things had to develop and grow and jump between species and different stuff. The missing link is a thing for a reason, is we don't have the connection point yet from that worldview. And so, like, I think the more we think about it, it gets challenging. And sometimes within Christianity, it's the same. The more you think about it, the more challenging it gets. And if, like you, when you're a kid, if you have those questions and someone's not willing to meet you there and talk through them with you.
I think another thing for a kid, right? You say that this is the good. Adam and Eve started it, right? Mm-hmm. There opens that Pandora's box of, there were dinosaurs.
Dude,
right?
Okay, there's a lot.
Right, that's a lot to go. Okay,
you have to think
and here's why that, of course, that argument will stand forever. Is we have legitimate proof of bones of some animate thing mm-hmm. that might have been alive millions of years ago. Mm-hmm. Now you can have discussions again about carbon
dating.
Carbon dating. Mm-hmm. There's arguments against and for that stuff, but we have no legitimate proof with carbon dating mm-hmm. of a human existing at that same time frame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, why and how, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah, and some of that I can't answer fully. I can give you. I could sit here and
why
give
did the stories of the Bible leave any of that out? If they let's say they coexisted, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, so I think I can sit here and give you what I believe are justifications for those things, and how my worldview can stay intact through that. But at the end of the day, it'll again comes down to,
that's another podcast.
It could be another podcast too, because we can talk. We're over an hour. Yeah, we could. We do this all the time, so we can just keep going.
We talk hours and hours.
So, and it may be a good talk for another time, because that is a challenging aspect of the Christian worldview. Is what do we do with fossil records, and what do we do with carbon dating, and was the flood local? Was it worldwide? Did it even happen? Like all this different stuff. You have to kind of
and man, Noah was a craftsman. That dude built a boat that held two of every animal.
A lot, yeah. So it's and what tends to happen is when I can go in and I can give justifications for why I believe what I believe and why I think my worldview stays intact on kind of how the earth was created and how those things make sense. I think the natural inclination is to go, it sounds pretty convenient. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, nice how you just work that in there. That's pretty convenient. Mm-hmm. To where I say it's also pretty convenient that we got here from nothing randomly. Because if you just open the world up to billions of years and random chance, anything's possible. Mm-hmm. And so it's just as convenient. So I just preface that. So if we do have that conversation sometime and talk through that, it sounds very convenient, but it's just as convenient on the other side. It's just we accept that a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I think that's.
We have touched on everything.
We're really
and then
good.
some.
Yeah. But this is welcome to a conversation with Derek Guy. This is usually how it goes, and it's fun. It's fun. But dude, I just want to say I'm really thankful. I think it was brave of you to get onto a Christian podcast with a pastor and talk about all this stuff and talk about our friendship. I'm just really thankful for you, man.
Likewise. I don't know if I've ever had this as a stepping stone I've wanted in my life. But here it is. Yeah. I just, for me personally, this is just more in terms of growth and learning mm-hmm. in life in general.
Yeah.
And that I think that's a lot of why we're here, is to learn from everyone. Mm-hmm. And build a better self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to help others build them better.
Yeah.
Right. Not that I'm here to preach, because I'm not a pastor.
Hey, why don't you go ahead? What's your main points? What are your applications for your sermon that you're giving right now?
Nothing. Nothing.
You wanna fill in and preach for me on Sunday? That'd be great.
Oh God, it would be awful. I will say to everybody, listen, like I've always complimented Jeremy on his ability to speak publicly. For me personally, I did not have a good ability trying to articulate what I actually thought until I've outgrown some of my ADD. A strong problem with it, like ADD in general, is having really fast thought processes, and then trying to say everything that's coming all at once. It just comes out as mumble words. And it is so for me, like part of growing is patience. Like I was saying earlier, right? Having the patience to slow down, say what you really want to say, because people will listen. No matter how slow you talk, unless you're just like one word a minute, if you're slow, people will listen. And as long as the message is meaningful.
You always find an audience. There's and our modern internet and everything will show us that. You can always find an audience. But no, I appreciate it. It's the craft of teaching is something I work really hard at, and trying to communicate well and express myself well. A lot of that comes from, and I think we've talked about this, is one of my favorite people is Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he wrote a book called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry that I read years ago.
Also a non-believer.
Yes, very much so. And I've listened to a lot of his stuff where he talks about the Bible and God and intelligent design, or all the different stuff, and it's fascinating. But what he is so good at, and it's been influential for me, is he is able to take very complex ideas, like it's astrophysics,
and connect it all together,
and simplify it down to where I can understand what you're saying, and also wows me with it. It's like, let me just blow your mind for a second. Let me boil this down, this very complex idea, down to just a couple sentences, and give that to you in a way that you can understand. And that's what I try to do with the Bible, with Jesus, with any concept that I'm going to teach. And he was very influential for me on that. Just try to simplify something.
I think that says a lot about you as your character, as a person who is a leader of faith, to open your ears and eyes to someone who is obviously on another stratosphere of intelligence. Right?
Hey, wow, how dare you, first of all. I'm kidding. He is.
Come on. Let's be honest with ourselves here.
Just as smart.
Right? That as a non-believer, and you listen and you internalize what he's saying and try to apply maybe some of what he's saying to your life, right?
Also watch a lot of comedians. And public speakers in general, because especially comedians are very good storytellers.
Yes.
And they can engage an audience and keep you on the edge. And that's really influenced me too, and how I tell stories and how I teach, is I use callbacks a lot, which is a comedic term and tool, of a callback to a former thing to connect things. You're like, oh, that's good. Okay, that's helpful. Like stuff like that. So, I use.
Jeremy's talked a lot about callbacks before with me.
Callbacks?
Oh yeah.
What are you talking about?
You just said callback.
Yeah. Where'd you just go? I don't understand.
I'm just saying that you've had numerous times where you talked about using callbacks.
Oh yeah.
To me. Sorry. ADD again.
I didn't follow what you were saying.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Derek, thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. I'm glad we could
love you too,
have this, and I hope this conversation is helpful for people to listen to. It's two buds cutting it up.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts?
It is. I'll say the biggest thing that's interesting to me is that. Let me ask you this.
Okay, we're back.
Before we close off, am I your only? Well, no, that's not true, because you have James and
a
other
bunch of people. Yeah.
But I guess I'm your only close best friend that
probably
isn't.
Closest, yeah. Close friend that's not a Christian is where you're going, yeah.
Is there another person in your life that is that way at all, that you're just that close?
No, you are regularly worked into my schedule every week, every Thursday. There's no one else like that. I mean, I have, whether me and Clint go down to like Oak and Steel, And so I'll see a lot of the similar people there. I'll see, Kyle or Patrick or, these other guys that I'm friends with and somewhat close with. And then I also go to Bags and see a lot of those guys. I've developed really good friendships with a lot of those guys too. But yeah, you're definitely my closest non-Christian friend, if you will.
Okay.
If you want to categorize it.
Not that this matters, but I was just curious if there was anybody else like in your
Am I cheating on you? Is that what you're saying?
No. Well, I joke about that too. Clint,
always cheating.
I'm number one, Clint.
I think he may fight you on that.
But I also always remember that if it wasn't for Clint, I would have not ever had you in my life.
Yeah.
So, Clint, thank you.
All right, Clint. Thanks.
All right.
Kudos to him. All right, I'll let you go. But thank you, dude. I love you. And I guess we'll know that tomorrow, Thursday, is
Thanksgiving. Have a happy
so
Thanksgiving.
You too. You too, man. All right. Thank you, everybody. This has been the Equip Podcast, equipping you to live out your Christian life as you faithfully love God and love others with truth and grace. Now let's go do it.